What's up, it's Cinema Shogun here, and at this point, it feels like everybody and their mama is crawling out from under the woodwork to reveal that they knew Bryan Kohberger, to reveal little tidbits of information about Bryan Kohberger. We've heard from classmates, friends, family, but one person, and I don't know who this person is, like, in particular, but one person that I wanted to hear from was Bryan's neighbors at his apartment complex. I want to know about how Bryan was acting at home. And I know that he has neighbors. He lives in an apartment. We know what apartment he lives in. We know they've been searching in that apartment. And I just wanted to know if any of his neighbors noticed anything was weird. It's one thing for his classmates not to know, but neighbors, maybe they heard or saw something. And now Bryan's downstairs neighbor is speaking out, and it turns out they have some pretty interesting information for us here today. So let's go ahead and dive right into this article and figure out what's going on here, because I haven't read this article yet, and I am just as interested as all of you all. Bryan Kohberger's downstairs neighbor said the alleged quadruple slayer, God, that's what they're going to call this dude, the quadruple slayer? It sounds like a punk rock band. Can we just call him the Freak? Bryan Kohberger's downstairs neighbor said the alleged quadruple slayer never slept and looked too weak to kill. That's another point that I've been making. I'm like, this dude looks frail, but other people seem to feel differently. I know this guy is a vegan, and I mean, listen, okay? I'm not trying to accuse vegans of anything, but damn, there sure are a lot of vegan killers. Maybe, just maybe, if they ate a medium rare steak from Outback or something, these freaks would stop committing these crimes. Stop eating so much salad. Obviously, I'm not the one to, preach to anyone about their diet. I eat a lot of meat. I think you can tell that. But I'm telling you all, man, some of these vegans, they be losing it. Don't come for me in my comment section yelling at me about that comment either. But anyway, let's go back into the article. The neighbor who asked to remain anonymous says that Kohberger usually kept to himself, but could always be heard during odd hours of the night. He's normally a very late night person, going to the bathroom and vacuuming at 1 or 12 in the morning, she said. I have kids, so sometimes I thought of speaking to him or complaining, but never did. Good thing she didn't, because lady, you dodged a bullet with that one. If you would have went and complained to that dude, ain't no telling what he would have done. Good God Almighty, I know she is happy she didn't go do that now. Oh man, sorry. Sometimes I make myself laugh and I forget where I'm at in these articles. It seemed like he never slept because he was always doing something all night. She and her husband were in complete shock when their upstairs neighbor was named as the suspect in the brutal University of Idaho unalivings that rocked the community. I don't know how he could have unalived people because he didn't look that tough, she said. We are all PhD students here, so it takes a lot of hard work and smarts to get to this point. You don't think someone like that could do something like this. Kohberger was studying criminology at Washington State University and was living in student housing that was usually meant for PhD students and families. He moved there in August, said the neighbor. At first, he moved in by himself, and we thought his family would come later. But he lived there alone, she recalled. She said she once saw someone who looked like another young female student get out of Kohberger's white car, but they parted ways and went to their own apartments. Hold on. I hope they find out who that girl is, and I hope she's okay. Anybody riding with Kohberger, you never know what might happen to you. The neighbor, also a graduate student, said she and the accused killer would say hello to each other in passing, and she once heard Kohberger bring another woman home. She didn't see the woman, but the walls are so thin, she heard Kohberger and the woman talking. So a lot of people have been labeling Kohberger as this incel that probably had a hard time with women and interacting with women. And that may be the case, but there are conflicting stories out there. Because, I mean, here's two women right here that this woman says she saw Kohberger with. And I provided a story on my other channel yesterday for you all, where people would ask Kohberger to go jogging with them at night and stuff because they felt comfortable with Kohberger. I'm not saying that he wasn't socially awkward, but some socially awkward people are only socially awkward in maybe big group settings, but in smaller settings, they're normal. I think me, for example, I thrive better when I'm around a few people as opposed to throwing me into a crowd of hundreds or throwing me into a large classroom with people all around me. You know what I mean? So I don't know how awkward socially this dude was. He looks like he's awkward. So I believe that, but I also think that Bryan probably had this other side to him that made people take their guard down around him. But let's go ahead and go further into this post. Okay. Some residents who lived nearby said he kept a low profile. I'd see him go check his mail and that was it. Other than that, I've only seen him like twice the whole time. And I lived here since July 2021. Okay, so the obvious piece of information that I'm really thinking about from that article is that all the weird noises they claimed to hear coming from Bryan's apartment, and Bryan was always up late doing something. Who does that remind you of? I'll give you a second. Someone in their apartment. There is always these weird noise, stuff banging around. It was always late at night. Reminds me of Jeffrey Dahmer. Remember how Jeffrey Dahmer's neighbors complained about foul odors and weird noises and bangs and stuff coming from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment? Why were all of these loud noises taking place in the middle of the night? What was Bryan doing up there? Now, we know they searched through the apartment. I don't know what they found. I hope they look very thoroughly through that apartment to see if they can find any traces of blood or DNA that may be from someone else. I am not convinced that this is the first time Bryan did something like this. This is a hell of a way to start a killing spree. So I can't help but feel like there may be something else. But we also know that Bryan had issues dealing with substances. I don't know if he was still on that. Supposedly he was clean. But who knows? Maybe Bryan was getting geeked up at night and, cleaning, because a lot of tweakers, they love to clean. I can tell you that, okay? But also maybe Bryan was paranoid. Maybe Bryan would sit there in the middle of the night and feel like, oh, I need to vacuum again. I need to scrub this. I need to wash this. I need to make sure I'm not leaving any evidence, because we now know that after Bryan committed these crimes, everywhere he went, at least from what we've been told by people who were following Bryan, Bryan was wearing gloves and stuff like that, trying to make sure that he didn't leave behind fingerprints in grocery stores all the way across the country. So I wouldn't be surprised if after Bryan did this, he went home and washed or whatever, and over the days after he did this, he would probably get paranoid in the middle of the night and feel like he needs to clean everything and wash everything. Who knows? Who knows? But I do hope and pray that they look through that apartment, because I can tell you right now, if we got the information tomorrow that Bryan had other victims, I wouldn't even bat an eye. It would not surprise me in the least bit. I would look at that information and be like, yeah, of course he did. You know what I mean? So who knows? Who knows? I do find it odd that he had these weird hours. And you see, someone that is Bryan's age being up in the middle of the night, cool. Bryan, it's not like Bryan was having these big parties at his apartment. Hell, 9 times out of 10, from what people say, it didn't even look like Bryan had anyone at the apartment at all. So Bryan's by himself, making all this noise in the middle of the night. And then Bryan has to wake up and go to school in the morning. Bryan is taking difficult classes. Bryan is teaching other people. Now, from what people say in Bryan's classroom, Bryan always looked tired. I don't know what was going on in Bryan's apartment, but I can guarantee you there was a reason behind it. Was Bryan conducting tests and simulations to see how things would go if he tried to do something? Maybe Bryan was up there working out, trying to get stronger so he could hold his victims down. I don't know. But I do find it really weird that Bryan had this weird sleep schedule and he was loud in the middle of the night. It reminds you of so many other people who have done things like Bryan. But we can only think, we can only speculate. Hopefully more details come out. And I just hope that investigators look into every single thing that they can. Because I would not be surprised if they could tie Bryan to something else. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I will talk to you all in the next video.